Good morning. We're going to go over Chapter 5, Section 4, which is Part 2, Synthetic Division. So, in order to use synthetic division, you're going to grab this polynomial right here. You're going to put it in standard form. Remember, standard form is from the biggest exponent to the smallest exponent. And they want us to divide by x plus 2. So, in order to find the number that we're going to use, we're going to do x plus 2 is equal to 0. We're going to subtract the 2 on both sides, and we get x is equal to negative 2. You will now divide by negative 2, which is placed right here. Now, the numbers that you see on the synthetic division are the coefficients of every single term in that order. That's why it's 1, negative 14, 51, negative 54. Your first step is to bring down the 1. Then you're going to multiply the number you're dividing with by that number, and you're going to place it up here. So we bring out the 1, negative 2 times 1 gives us negative 2, and then you will add these two numbers. Here we get negative 16. Now after we get negative 16, we're going to follow the same procedure. We're going to grab that negative 2, multiply by negative 16, and we're going to keep going. We're going to get 32. I'm going to add these two numbers. Now we'll get 83. I will again multiply times the 83 and get negative 166. I add those numbers and I get negative 220, which is what we have right here. Now your final answer is going to be this solution, but you're going to write it in a specific way. Now, since you started with an x to the third power, this is now an x squared. So it's going to be 1x squared minus 16x plus 83. And then we have this negative 220. So we're going to write remainder negative 220. Now, this one is in the long division style, which is what we covered in 5.4 part 1. We're just going to go ahead and do it again, just to practice. So this is going to be 4x. So we're going to multiply everything times 4x, so it's going to be 20x. 4x squared. Remember, when you subtract, you're subtracting everything, so you have to distribute that negative. So this negative 4 and negative 20. We're going to add them. These cancel out. We're left with 3x minus 16. So we're going to go ahead and do plus 3. Multiply everything. 3 times 5 is 15. 3 times x is 3x. Remember that negative, when you're subtracting, is distributed to everything. So this becomes negative. This becomes negative. These cancel out. And we're left with negative 31. So your solution would be 4x plus 3, remainder negative 31 for this solution. Now, let's do this one in synthetic division to practice the first thing we did on the PowerPoint. So I'm going to go ahead and write this in standard form, just taking the coefficients. Now, it is important to note that if you are missing an x, you want to put a 0 in its place. So, for example, this was 2x cubed plus 7x plus 11, and you were to write it in synthetic division, you would do 2x3 plus 0x squared plus 7x plus 11, and then go ahead and write those coefficients. If you miss that 0, you will get the answer most likely wrong. In this case, though, we only have an x squared and x and then the constant, so that's perfect. We're going to go ahead and do 2, 7, and 11. And then we're going to equal this to 0, so we get that our x that we're dividing by is negative 2. I'm going to go ahead and bring that 2 down, multiply it 2 times the negative 2 to get negative 4. We're going to add those to get 3, multiply these 2 to get negative 6, and we're left with a 5. So now, since we started with an x squared, this is going to be 2x plus 3, and then remainder 5 for the final answer. Now let's do the same thing here. Like I mentioned, we have a cube and we have an x. I'm going to rewrite this with a 0x squared. And then we're going to divide by x is equal to 4. So I'm going to write the coefficients. So 1, 0, negative 13, negative 12. We're going to go ahead and divide by 4. Bring down the 1. 1 times 4 is 4. Add the 4 and the 0, which is 4. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 minus 13 is 3. 4 times 3 is 12. We add these and we get 0. So now we started with an x cubed, so this would be x squared plus 4x plus 3. Since the remainder is 0, you do not have to write the remainder. You can just go ahead and say this is your expression after you divide. Let's do this one. First thing to note is it in standard form? Yes, it is. So I'm going to go ahead and write 1, 5, 11, and 15. And we're going to equal this to 0. So we get x is equal to -3. That's the number we're going to divide by. I'm going to go ahead and bring down the 1. 1 times -3 is -3. 5 plus -3 is 2. This is going to be -6. It's going to be 5. It's going to be 15. This will be 0. Now, since we started with an x cubed, we're going to go ahead and do x squared plus 2x plus 5, and that will be your solution for the time being, because all they want you to do is divide by the number. Let's go ahead and do this one. Is it in standard form? Yes. So 1, -1, -4, and 4, and we're dividing by +2. Remember, we equal this to 0 to get the +2 of x is equal to 2. Bring this down. 1 times 2 is 2. This is 1. 1 times 2 is 2. This is -2. -2 times 2 is -4. 0. So now we're left with x squared plus x minus 2 as the final answer. Now, lastly, let's do this one. We have 1, 3, -1, and 2. We're going to do synthetic division by 1. We're going to bring down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 3 and 1 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. This is 3. 3, this is 5. So now we have x squared plus 4x plus 3, remainder 5 as our final answer. Now, guys, make sure you turn this in by the end of class. You do have homework overnight. On Monday, you will be working on your quiz review, so make sure you guys get your homework done, because on the 25th, which is Tuesday, you have your third quiz of the quarter.